Uh, at the Pump Symposia, we have tried to give you different types of sessions so that, we try to maximize the knowledge share that we can do from the experts. So now moving from a kind of a presentation from Siddharth, we move to a kind of a dedicated technical workshop on how do you select, operate and maintenance perspectives of vertical and submersible pumps. This is a kind of a hardcore 60-minute technical workshop. And to deliver that, I would like to invite Mr. Vineet Kulkarni, Associate Vice President at Kishore Pumps. Over to you, Vineet.
Thank you, Kailashji. And my name is Vineet Kulkarni. I represent Kishore Pumps. And in my presentation, see, this workshop is split into two halves. So in the first half, I will be talking about the selection, operation, and maintenance perspective of submersible pump. And similarly, after my workshop, my colleague Mr. Kiran Vaidya will talk about vertical submerged pump VS4 type. So let me share my presentation. So during the panel discussion also, this topic has been discussed in detail, that selection of a proper pump plays a very important role in the overall life cycle of the pump as well as the system. In our company, there is a say that service before sales will save you service after sales. This means that the larger the interaction you have while selecting the pumps with the end user, with the consultant, or with the turnkey contractor, will help you to select a proper pump, which if operated properly, give the optimum solution. So in my presentation, we are talking about submersible pumps. So where these submersible pumps are typically used. So as we know, the maximum use of this submersible pump is in the wastewater industry. This technology is now well established in India for more than 30 years. And almost all the wastewater plants are specified with submersible pumps for sewage as well as sludge application. Apart from wastewater plants, these pumps are now also widely used in raw water pumping for water supply and irrigation schemes. This is, we say, as a success of a submersible motor technology having established well within India. That is why all these submersible pumps are now used for various other applications rather than wastewater. Now, many industrial effluents in water and wastewater treatment plants, which either may contain or may not contain solid particles, are also used. And the last application or widely used is dewatering in mines or industries or steel plants or power plants. These submersible pumps are used for various applications. So when we select a pump, there is normally every manufacturer has to consider certain points. We have certain questionnaires which we share with the users and ask for specific information. Why this specific information is needed, we will go one by one. As we say, the submersible pumps are mainly classified as solid handling pumps, majorly. So first we need to know is the solid size in the liquid to be pumped. There are many applications which will have solid handling requirement ranging from 0 mm to 100 mm. And every manufacturer will have different series from 0 solids to 100 mm solids, which has impact on the selection of the pump in terms of pump size as well as the efficiency. Secondly, apart from the size of the solids, there is also nature of solids which plays a very major role. If the liquid contains solid particles which are either soft or abrasive, or there is a tendency of bundling solids, these will have impact on the metallurgy selection sometimes, as well as the impeller design. Third point, this submersible motor, they don't have any air cooling arrangement. These submersible motor are always cooled by the liquid in which they are operating. So it is necessary that the motor is always submerged in the liquid up to the low liquid level, which is obviously recommended by the manufacturer depending on the pump sizing. Now, if your process allows that this motor can be submerged all the time, then there is no separate cooling arrangement required to be made. But if your process doesn't allow that minimum submergence to be maintained in case of the pumps are of bigger sizes, then the requirement is that the pump should also be able to operate either in the partially submerged condition. In that case, the manufacturers do provide cooling jackets with either internal or external cooling arrangement. So this factor you must specify to the manufacturer for selection of a proper pump. Now, having said this, obviously what you basically need for selection of a pump is the operational duty point at which your pump is expected to operate, that is the capacity and the head. Now, when you have a typical capacity and head requirement known, there is always, very many times or always it happens that submersible pumps in water or wastewater it's not a process duty, it is a transfer duty. So there is very less likelihood that pump will always operate at a selected duty point continuously. So there is always a variation in the capacity and head on which the pump operates. So you should have the operating range for which the pump is going to operate apart from the duty condition. Means if I select a pump at say 10-meter head and the pump is also expected to operate at say 6-meter head. So this should be known to the manufacturer while selecting the pump so that they can select and offer you the pump to cater to your operating range. The next point, which of course you need to specify, is the type of operation, that if it is a standalone operation or parallel operation. Typically for raw sewage application, it happens that pumps are expected to operate in parallel, either a VFD driven system or non-VFD driven system. But if pumps are expected to operate in parallel, the manufacturer must select the pumps near or slightly left-hand side to the best efficiency point, so that when they operate in parallel, the combined pump performance is as near the best efficiency point. Now, this is slightly basic. When we say select any pump, it is selected and characterized by the pump performance curve, which is the relation between flow and head. And you normally tend to see this is a shut-off head, whereas the flow is 0 and the head is the maximum on the characteristic curve, where you are not expected to operate the pump. So you always try and tend to select the pump near the best efficiency point. So best efficiency point is the point on the characteristic curve at which flow and head, the efficiency will be the maximum on that particular model. If we see this, either you go at the right-hand side of the best efficiency point or left-hand side of the best efficiency point, efficiency decreases in both the cases. So it is necessary for the manufacturer to see that the pump is selected near the best efficiency point. Of course, this depends upon the many factors like the flow specified, the head specified, the solid handling requirement, because in some applications, especially industrial applications, it might happen that you have a flow requirement of say only 20 meter cube per hour, but a head is as high as 30 meter or 40 meter, and still you require a solid handling capacity of say minimum 25 mm or 50 mm. In such cases, it is very difficult to get the pump at a best efficiency point. But all efforts should be made that the pump is selected near to the best efficiency region. Now, this is the most important point for any submersible or for that matter, any solid handling pump. As we said, in the wastewater industry or even in the industrial plants, there are many applications for which this submersible pump are used. So in a treatment plant, as it was covered by Siddharth sir in his presentation, there are many applications from raw sewage application, then RAS, which we say activated sludge or surplus activated sludge, just dewatering, and at the end of the plant there is called CCT, that is after the treatment. So for all these applications, although type of pump is same, you don't require identical solid handling capacity for the application. For raw sewage application, you will need maybe 100 mm solid passages. For sludge application, 50 mm solid passage is sufficient. For dewatering applications or just a wastewater application, 25 mm solid handling capacity is sufficient. And clear liquid, you don't require any solid handling capacity for that particular application. For this, every manufacturer normally now have different series, and it is very important to specify the correct solid handling capacity for the users and as well as for the manufacturers to understand the application from solid handling point of view and offer the correct pump. Because for the same duty condition, 100 mm solid passage pump will have the least efficiency and clear liquid pump have the maximum efficiency. Because of the impeller designing, I mean the non-clog impeller design which is required to handle the solid particle, the hydraulic efficiency of the pump is inversely proportional to its solid handling capacity. In this slide, we have shown a typical application. In the left-hand side, it is a raw sewage pumping pit where you can see the kind of solid particles which the pump is expected to handle. Whereas in the right-hand slide, you can see that it is almost clear liquid. It is a treated sewage. So there you don't need a solid 100 mm solid handling capacity pump. There a clear liquid pump is good enough. Now, as we discussed in the earlier slide, here we have shown an illustration wherein for the same duty point, here the duty point considered is say 300 meter cube per hour at 26 meter head. If this particular pump is used for raw sewage application, wherein we required 100 mm solid handling capacity, for which we have one series called A series, it offers you 70% efficiency. Now for the same duty condition, if this pump is used for a screen sewage with lesser solid handling capacity, maybe for a sludge application, we have a C series where we can get 76% efficiency. And if for the same duty condition, we used it for a clear liquid series, we can get efficiency to the tune of 80%. So you can see the difference in the efficiency. See, typically, as was discussed in the panel discussion, consultants or the end user have a tendency to specify, say, 75% efficiency generic for any submersible pump. But in that case, our experience says that when we talk of submersible sewage pump for handling raw unscreened sewage, their reliability should play a major role than the hydraulic efficiency. Because to achieve that hydraulic efficiency of 70%, if we compromise on the impeller design or solid handling capacity, it might happen that that pump will give you 75 or 80% efficiency at the test bed. But on actual site, it will not perform at all. So the reliability is jeopardized, and that hydraulic efficiency of no use if the pump cannot perform for the application it is designed for. So here also we can see a typical site where the solid size is not only important, but the type of solid is also important when selecting the correct pump. And as was discussed during the panel discussion as well, if the screening is not proper, many times what happens is screens are, solid handling capacity is defined based on the screen available. But if the screens are not working properly, or there is a tendency to bypass the screens, and then all the load will come to the pump. Here are some site examples wherein how you can see in the first example, it was designed for a sludge application. The solid handling capacity was good, but since those were the bundling solids, they are choked within the casing and the bottom plate there. In the second slide also, it is shown the same way how these solids are choked. And third slide shows that in view of the improper screening, how much solids the pump has to take care of. Now, having said about the selection criteria in terms of solid particles and series and all, one more important aspect you need to understand is whether the pump is required to operate in a single operation or a parallel operation. Typically, in all the intermediate pumping station or raw sewage transfer pits, pumps are often needed to be installed in parallel to deliver the required variation. Here we have shown that there are 3 pumps, pump 1, pump 2, pump 3. Those have independent delivery branches, and there is a common header. All these 3 independent delivery branches are fed to the common header, which adds the flow of the 3 pumps and delivers at the required destination. Now, this parallel pumping system, where it is useful, it is generally useful where the incremental flow augmentation over time in industrial and municipal project as the project capacities increase. Because typically all the municipal projects are designed keeping in mind the flows and heads after say 20 or 25 years. But today pumps are not required up to that capacity. So there is a parallel pumping envisaged in the system. And it also allows for redundancy in the system, and it ensures as flow continuity as and when pumps are needed to be taken out for repairs and maintenance. One important thing which needs to be considered for parallel operation is, ideally for stable operation, all the pumps to be operated in parallel should be identical. That is, their characteristics should be same. But there are some instances that dissimilar pumps are also operated in parallel, but by and large, it is always advantageous to use identical pumps. Now here we see a typical operation in a parallel pumping system. Here we are seeing that a system curve. So system curve takes care of, or system curve tells about the frictional losses in the pump pipeline as well as in the common manifold. As you can see here in this particular example, it goes from 10 meter head to say 60 meter head. So 10 meter head is a static head, and then the frictional losses, which also increases with the flow, are added into it. Now, if we put first pump in the operation, when we put first pump in the operation, there is always a point which is called the intersection of systems resistance curve and the pump operating curve, which is called as the pump operating point. Here now this is the pump operating point when the first pump is operating. When you add the second pump in the system, this is a combined curve of 2 pumps operating in parallel. You can see here that the operating point is shifted now. So if the first pump is operating say at 30 meter head, when the 2 pumps are operating, flow is doubled and the pumps are operating at around 40 meter head. Similarly, when the third pump is added in the system, there is a combined curve of 3 pumps, and where it intersects the system curve becomes the operating point for the 3 pumps operating together. Now you can see in these examples that when the 3 pumps are operating, the head is maximum, single pump is operating, head is minimum. But when you select a pump, you need to take care of the pump in such a way that it can operate at the maximum head also as well as the minimum head. And if there is a large component of frictional head between the operation of single pump, 2 pump and 3 pump, such large variation cannot be every time possible in a constant speed operation pump. So there comes a VFD. See here we are seeing that the pump 1, 2 and 3 are operated, the head is maximum. When there is only 1 pump is operated, the head is minimum. But the head variation required is much more. So this is achieved using a VFD. So if we use a VFD, this means that all the pumps, when at rated frequency operated, they will operate at their maximum capacity. When they are operated in 45 hertz, the capacities are lower. So as we all know, there are laws of law of infinity, which says that flow rate is proportional to RPM, head is proportional to square of RPM, and power is proportional to cube of RPM. So using this principle, we can use VFD effectively to have a flexible operating system. So we can see in this state that when the pumps are operated at 50 hertz, the head is like here, and the pumps are operated at 45 hertz and single pumping operation, head is here. So this large variation in head and this large operating range can be achieved well using the VFD. So you can see as much as this large operating head is possible using the VFD, which are now effectively used in all the sewage pumping station and sewage treatment plants. Now, having said about the selection and operational aspects of submersible pump, there are two important aspects for trouble-free operation of the pump. That is the installation, which we will see in brief. First important thing required to take care during installation is strong foundation. Majority of the submersible pump are used with a auto coupling arrangement, and it is necessary that this auto coupling arrangement is properly grouted and you have a strong foundation, so that the pumps are not subject to various vibration issues. Then when you install the pump, there is a typical issue that pumps are installed today, but they are used after say 1 month or 2 months when the site is ready in all respects. For that, it is necessary that you ensure that the pump cable is not submerged in the liquid. These pumps are all provided with a special submersible cable with a special sealing arrangement, but we need to ensure that the pump cable is not submerged in the liquid, to ensure that any moisture or liquid doesn't get in the pump through the cable. Now, as we all know, submersible pump is a monoblock pump, where submersible pump as motor is a single unit. And because of these solid handling issues, and pumps are subjected to very adverse conditions, which always have impact on the motor. So to save the motor from any adverse impact, all the submersible motors are provided with certain basic safety feature like overheating protection, seal wear out sensor, low liquid level control, etc. And every pump manufacturer generally provides a specific relay called pump controller or pump monitor, which take care of all the safety features, and which gives signal to the control panel to trip off the motor in case of any adversaries. So it is absolutely essential to ensure proper electrical connection and integration of that pump controller with the panel to save the motor in case of any emergencies. Then when you install the pump, every manufacturer specifies the center to center distance between the two pumps, that is from hydraulic point of view as well as from maintenance point of view. So that center to center distance must be respected when you install the pump. Similarly, every manufacturer specifies minimum bottom clearance between the pump casing and the sump bottom. To avoid vortex formation at section, it is necessary to maintain that minimum bottom clearance to ensure trouble-free operation of the pump. Now, from operation perspective, we have discussed earlier that proper screening facility, depending upon the pump solid capacity, plays a very, very major role in the long trouble-free operation of the pump. Otherwise, if the screens are not operating properly, anything can come in the pump, and if the system fails, the total blame come on the pump only. So to avoid this, every user should maintain the proper screening depending on the pump solid handling capacity. As we see in the earlier point, that every pump is provided with the specific electrical protection. So the user must respect the electrical relay settings. Typically, what happens is, in case of say overheating or seal failure, the pumps give trips continuously, then there is a tendency for the operators to bypass the relay settings or increase the relay setting. So by increasing this relay setting or bypassing the relays, for the time being, you feel that, okay, the pump is working now, but ultimately it affects the life of the pump and motor gets burned. So respecting these electrical relay settings is very important. When the system is VFD operated and many pumps are operated in parallel through VFD, it is necessary that all the pumps are operated at the same frequency to ensure that all the pumps are operating in a similar characteristic curve, and shut-off head and operating pressure for all the pumps is same, so that you don't get any problems during the operation of the pumps. For many times it happens, if the VFD operated system, then you can take care if the duty condition is different. But many times the system is not VFD operated, and during initial start only, you understand that the duty condition at site are different than the duty condition for which the pump is designed for. In that case, it is absolutely necessary to take immediate corrective actions. One of that corrective actions could be you trim the impeller to suit the duty point available at site, so that the pump is operated at the rated duty condition. And as we discussed earlier, the motor continuously is required to be submerged up to the pre-decided level, either in the jacketed or in a non-jacketed construction. So it is necessary to ensure that level transmitters are set at the low liquid level recommended by the manufacturer to avoid any kind of dry running. So with this operational and selection perspective of submersible pump, the pumps can be operated well and give their service for the complete service life. This is from all from my side. Thank you. If any questions are there, those are welcome.
Vinit, we do have a few questions to you and I will take them up. So
Sure.
Abhijit Rai Chaudhary has asked a question. He says that you just mentioned that in your thing, pump cable is not submerged. He says that since the pump is submerged, some portion of the cable will have to be submerged. So can you please explain?
Yes, certainly some portion of the cable will be always submerged, but the cable leads should not be submerged. That is what I mean, from where the liquid should not go inside the pump.
Okay.
Cable lead should not be submerged as far as possible.
Okay. Christopher Stephen is asking this question, Vinit, is that does cavitation also occur in submersible pumps?
It does occur, but compared to non-submersible pump, this phenomenon is less because these pumps are always operated in the flooded suction conditions.
Okay. Anthony Fernandez is asking, do you also for sludge handling also do you supply screw pumps?
No, we don't supply screw pumps. If the sludge consistency is less than say or around 4 to 5%, then these submersible pump with standard centrifugal submersible pump with non-clog impeller are equally suitable. But if it is more than that, then screw pumps are recommended, which we are not manufacturing.
Okay. So Anthony Fernandez is asking a further question. Do you incorporate inbuilt thermal overload cutoff for the motor in submersible pumps, which can clog due to foreign material?
Yes, there is a winding overheating protection provided in all the submersible motors. There are three thermic switches embedded in each phase of the winding, and those are brought in the relay. So in case of temperature going beyond say 155 degrees centigrade or which can be pre-decided, it will give the signal to the control panel and trip off the motor.
Okay. We have Desaja Kumarege who is asking the question, can we request separately the efficient curve of a pump for a known particle size range? He says that I mean apart from the design fat curve which is normally given by the manufacturer for clear water.
Can you repeat?
He says, can we request separately the efficiency curve for a pump for a known particle size range?
Yes, it is possible. It is possible. If you give us a specified duty condition and nature or type of solid, there will be two different curves. Like we talked about the QH curve, we can also provide the Q versus efficiency curve for the solid handling requirements, if I understood it correctly.
Okay, Dr. Venkateshwaran is asking this question, saying that for a sewage pump with 2.5 km discharge point at the range 15 meter head, is it advisable or worth to go in for VFD driven pumps?
Can you please repeat?
For a sewage pump with 2.5 km discharge point and 15 m head, is it advisable to go for a VFD driven pumps?
So if this 15 meter is, I take it as a static head and 2.5 kilometer long is the discharge line, then I take it that frictional losses will be added into this. So if this distance is too high, yes, there is a VFD operated pump will be an optimal solution.
Okay, Mr. Kondala is asking what is the difference between submersible pumps and polder pumps?
See, polder pump and submersible pump, I mean, polder pump is also a submersible pump. These are not two different categories. Polder pump is also a submersible pump, but that is mainly used for dewatering purposes. It will not have the solid handling ability which is produced by the solid handling submersible pumps. But per se, from motor technology point of view, these two are not different pumps.
Okay. Abhijit is asking a further question, Vineet. He says that with regards to your answer on cavitation, he says, I guess the cavitation experienced in submersible pumps is due to vortexing and not due to NPSH. Can Vineet explain if this is accurate?
This we will answer it separately to Mr. Roy Chaudhary afterwards.
Okay. Mr. Ajay Kumar Vasudev is asking this question. He says, we use submersible pumps in industrial aeration tanks in the pulp and the paper industry to mix and inject pure oxygen. But of late, we are experiencing pipe holes and cracks of the discharge pipe at the bend. What could be the reason?
Yeah, this application we will need to study for that. So if you can have afterwards, please share the number with us. We will get back to them to this.
Okay. Shakil Shah Vineet is asking, how can the temperature, that is overheating, and hydraulic loading be prevented in submersible pumps?
See, by this, I take it that this over temperature in motor we are talking about, or it is a liquid temperature?
Well, he's not mentioned that in his question. So maybe
See,
I
if
could
it is a
send it
temperature
across to
because
you.
of overheating, then obviously motor are provided the protective relays. But if it is a liquid temperature, then submersible pumps do have a limitation on liquid temperature to be handled. They can handle well for liquid temperature up to 50 degrees centigrade, because all the rubber components are also designed on that. And since the motor is cooled by the liquid itself, the liquid temperature is need to be restricted to 50 degrees.
Okay, Kamlesh Kumar is asking, what is the effect of vortex in submersible pumps if ground clearance is more?
It will have more noise and vibrations, and it will not suck the liquids properly. There is also possibility that the solids could be getting clogged between the portion from the sump bottom and the pump casing.
Okay. Kondola again is asking a question. When do you prefer submersible to a centrifugal pump for sewage pumping?
See, fundamentally, submersible pump and centrifugal pumps are not two different categories. Submersible pump also in principle works on the centrifugal principle only. Now it's matter of installation. See, the same hydraulics, the same kind of hydraulics, if we say for 100 mm solid handling capacity, and which is having say 70% efficiency, if, irrespective of the type of installation you use in vertical extended shaft or vertical short shaft execution, or horizontal end section execution, or submersible execution, hydraulic performance is going to remain the same. Depending upon your process requirements, we need to choose the installation. Either it could be submersible or horizontal or vertical.
Thanks, Vineet. We will continue with the training workshop. And I would now like to invite Mr. Kiran Vaidya, Senior General Manager at Kishore Pumps, to continue with the technical workshop. We will take up the balance question after the session is over. So Kiran, you have around 25 minutes.
Yeah, thanks Kailaji. I will share my screen. Yeah. Good morning. I'm Kiran Vaidya. So today I will be emphasizing more on the selection, operation, and maintenance perspectives of vertical pumps, that is VS4 pumps, vertical submerged pumps. So first, where are these vertical pumps used typically? First is in highly corrosive liquids. It may be acids, alkalis. Then corrosive liquids with high temperature. When I say corrosive liquids with high temperature, that means either it may be sulfuric acid at high temperatures, or carbon disulfides, or even cyanides. the toxic or expensive liquids where small leakages are not allowed. So here in this case, even if there is a small leakage in vertical pump, the advantage is that the liquid will again fall in the tank. But if in case of horizontal pump, it will totally, the base frame will get corroded. If suppose there is a slight leakage also, the environmental will not remain clean, the base frame will be corroded and it will have problems. Even it could causes accidents. Suppose there is a sulfuric acid at high temperature and if the seal fails, there will be a splashing of sulfuric acid. Probably it may cause accidents to the operators. So here vertical pumps is the most safe pump which can be used for such type of typical applications. High negative lift applications and critical NPSH. Now in case of horizontal pumps, if you go for using these pumps, horizontal pumps for negative suction, you need to have a priming chamber. So that is the first most important thing. So priming is required. In case of vertical pumps, since your casing and impeller is submerged in the liquid, priming gets eliminated. So this is one advantage of going for a vertical submerged pump. Liquids to be transferred from storage pit to tank. So basically it is a transfer duty application. Now what are the important selection criteria for these vertical pumps? First is the liquid characteristics. So one should know what exactly is the liquid, because these vertical pumps in the industry are used for various applications, like from specific gravity ranging from 0.8, that is solvent, till specific gravity up to 2, that is for chlorosulfonic acids and oleums. So one has to know the exact specific gravity of the liquid, because that will affect your power and ultimately the motor rating, sizing of the motor rating. The same way, viscous, if the liquid is having viscosity of say 50 centipoise, so viscosity correction factors will apply, and that will change your probably the pump model and the power. Because all the pump manufacturers are normally, in all the manufacturers, they are designing the curves for the water application, that is specific gravity 1 and viscosity 1. So one should know the exact viscosity of the liquid to be handled, because that may change your pump model, that may change your power and ultimately the sizing of the motor rating. Coming to the temperature of liquid to be pumped. Now there are different temperatures, because these applications, it ranges from ambient temperature to 150-160 degree temperature. So for high temperatures, we need to decide the type of sealing, whether we have to go for a gland packing arrangement or a mechanical seal. So temperature plays a major important role. Also, we need to check the thermal expansions, because if the temperature is exceeding 160-180 degrees, then one should check the metallurgy and the design of the pump. Third thing is the solid contents. Now, when I say solid contents, I mean the solid size, the solid nature, and the solid percentage. Because, for example, in a fertilizer industry, when I say a slurry, the solid content may be 35 to 40%, but the solid size will be in microns. But still, it decides the type of the impeller, for which type of impeller we have to go. So in solid contents, these are the three important factors one should know while selecting the pump: the solid size, the solid nature. Solid nature could be either abrasive or non-abrasive. Again, that depends what metallurgy to be used, because if you use a stainless steel pump for abrasive slurry, it will immediately eat up your, the SS will be easily eaten up. So in that case, you have to go for a corrosion as well as abrasion resistant material. So these are the three parameters, important parameters while selecting the pump. Next is the tank installation depth. So for vertical type of pump, one should know the tank depth, because based on that, the pump manufacturer selects the installation depth and how much bottom clearance is to be maintained from the bottom of the tank. So one should know the tank, the nozzle height, all these details. Based on that, the pump manufacturer selects the installation depth. Next is the shaft sealing. Again, for some applications, barring some applications, normally a vertical pump is mostly given in a glandless construction, because in case of horizontal pumps, your stuffing box comes in directly contact with the liquid. But in vertical pump, you can see here, the stuffing box is above the support plate. This is a mounting plate. So your liquid never reach this stuffing box area. So majority of the applications in vertical pumps, they are offered with a glandless construction. That is neither with a gland packing nor with a mechanical seal. Barring few applications like solvent application or sulfuric acid at high temperature, we need to arrest the fumes coming out of the shaft area. So when the pump, the liquid is sucked through this suction, there are fumes coming around the shaft. So there we need to arrest here either by way of gland packing or way of mechanical seal. So only these are the applications like high temperature applications where we need to go for a packing or seals. Next is the type of operation, that is whether it is a standalone or a parallel, that will decide exactly where your duty point you should select at the on the performance curve. Now my colleague Vinith has already explained, this is a typical performance curve on x-axis flow rate and the y-axis head. So this is the best efficiency point where the maximum efficiency, where you have least problems, no thrust, nothing. So always select or operate a pump near the best efficiency point. And as you go away from the BEP towards the full wall open condition and towards the full wall closed condition, the efficiency will reduce. And this is the shut-off region. Now, what is radial thrust? Now, in vertical pump, the biggest enemy of vertical pump is the radial thrust. What is radial thrust? So it is the force resulting from pump delivering the liquid through the discharge. Second thing, it is a function of head of pressure generated by the pump and the vane thickness. It acts perpendicular to the direction of rotation. And in vertical pumps, the effect of radial thrust is more pronounced because of the more longer installation depths. Because as you increase the installation depth, the number of shaft increases, the number of joints increases. So higher the installation depth, there the possibility of damage is more, because the radial thrust will be acting much for that type of installation. Now you can see, this is the radial thrust lower, that is a pump. When the pump is operating at the best efficiency point, you will get the lowest radial thrust. And at the shutoff, the radial thrust will be more. So that can damage your bush bearings, the sleeve bearings. So for vertical pumps, from radial thrust point of view, you should select the pump near to the BEP, best efficiency point. Now, coming to the benefits or advantages over the horizontal end suction pumps. First thing, priming. In vertical pump, priming is not required because your casing and impeller are always submerged in the liquid. But in case of horizontal pumps, priming is mandatory, it is required. Shaft sealing, it is optional or probably eliminated. As I explained, majority of the applications, sealing is not required, barring a few. For high temperature applications, you need to have a gland packing or a mechanical seal. For some solvent applications, you have to go for a mechanical seal. But in case of horizontal end suction pump, shaft sealing is mandatory. Leakages in pump, it is not possible, because even if there is any leakage, it will again fall in the tank. But in horizontal pumps, there is a possibility of leakage, because even if you go for a mechanical seal, there is no 100% sealing. You cannot assure. So slight leakage can damage your foundation and the environment. Next, use in suction lift applications. This is the better solution for suction lift conditions, that is negative lift. Because as I explained, in negative suction, you have to have a priming chamber. You have to provide a footwall. Suppose solids come in between, your priming will not take place. So you will face problems in case of horizontal pumps. But this will get eliminated in case of vertical pumps. You don't require anything. Ground space for installation. Vertical pumps, it is less. In horizontal pumps, you have to have a big concrete by the foundation for installing the base frame. Suitability for corrosive and high temperature liquids. It is better compared to horizontal pumps. And in horizontal pump, not as suitable because again, there is a risk factor. Suppose high temperature applications, there is a leakage. It may cause accidents. Also environmental will damage. But in case of vertical pumps, there will be no leakage, nothing. Now coming to the limitations compared to the horizontal pumps. The maintenance. Here, vertical pumps, more time is consumed because you need to remove the assembly, total assembly from the tank. Whereas in horizontal pumps, it is quite quicker because of the back pull-out assembly. This is much easier, horizontal pumps. Additional energy losses. In vertical pumps, there is a minor energy loss due to the sleeve and bush, that is the transmission losses compared to horizontal pumps. In horizontal pumps, there is no bush and sleeve arrangement, so there are no any additional energy losses. And third thing, the manufacturing time, more due to the tailor-made design of the pump. Because in vertical pumps, if you say a 4-meter installation depth, there will be 3 shafts with the 3 intermediate bush bearings. So you need to check the shaft alignment. There is not any deflection in the shaft. So the manufacturing time is more in case of vertical pumps compared to the horizontal pumps. Now coming to the benefits over the vertical turbine pumps. Now I will explain the benefits of VS4 pumps, that is a vertical pump versus a vertical turbine pump. Shaft sealing, when you say first parameter, in vertical submerged pump, it is not required because your column pipe and the delivery pipe assembly is different here. And there is no possibility of liquid entering this stuffing box. So shaft sealing, almost in majority of the cases, it is not required. But in vertical turbine pump, it is required because there is a common chamber for column and discharge assembly. So discharge pipe is a pressurized part. So you need to have a mechanical seal or gland packing at the in the motor stool. Because of this assembly, the motor stool is very compact for your vertical submerged pump. In vertical turbine pump, the motor stool is very heavy because of, as I explained, it's a common chamber for the column pipe and delivery pipe. Dry running possibility. In vertical pumps, it can sustain with cantilever design, but in vertical pumps, it is not desirable. I will explain cantilever design in my next slide. Maintenance, it is less complicated, whereas in vertical pumps, it is more complicated than the VS4 type. Now, limitations compared to the vertical turbine pumps. In vertical turbine pumps, submerged pumps, the tank opening is large because your column pipe and delivery pipe are separate. Whereas in vertical pump, since it's in the common chamber, you have a less manual opening required, tank opening. Alignment, yes, in vertical pumps, it requires a skilled job. It's more balanced in case of vertical turbine pump. User in higher flow rates and heads. In vertical pumps, one has a limited range of sizes and heads, but in VT pumps, we have a wide range due to the addition of the bowls, that is for the in case of higher heads. Coming to the benefits of vertical submerged pumps over submersible pumps. First thing is the liquid nature. Vertical pumps are ideally suitable for corrosive, toxic, hygroscopic liquids, but in submersible pumps, it has a limitation. So these liquids cannot be handled by submersible pump. Operating temperature. Yes, vertical pumps can be used up to 140-150 degrees temperature, but submersible pumps normally it is suitable only up to 50 degrees. The reason behind it is that in submersible pumps, your surrounding, the pumping liquid itself cools the motor. So if the temperature of the pumping liquid itself is higher, it will burn the electric motor. So submersible pumps are not recommended above 50 degrees temperature. Now, what are the limitations compared to the submersible pump? Limitation of vertical submerged pumps compared to submersible. Maintenance. Yes, definitely it is a complicated in case of vertical pumps due to the longer shafts. Because if you offer a vertical pump of say 4.5 meters, it will have 3 shafts, 3 intermediate shaft couplings. So the maintenance is cumbersome. Whereas in submersible pumps, you require lesser time for routine maintenance because it is a monoblock construction, it's a single shaft. So this is the advantage. Energy loss, minor energy loss due to sleeve and bush shaft. But in submersible pumps, since there is no sleeve and bush, this energy loss gets eliminated. Solids. In vertical pumps, normally for industry applications, these are more recommended for clear liquids. Of course, there are applications where one can handle solids by using a different impeller design. But submersible pumps, the main advantage of the submersible pumps that it can handle larger solid particle size. External flushing. In vertical pumps, it is required because this is the intermediate bush bearing in which there is a bush and sleeve. There is a gap of 0.3 mm between bush and sleeve. So what happens due to the back pressure, the solids settle between the bush and sleeve region, and that creates a problem. So you always need an external flushing line, clear water, to flush out the solids between the bush and sleeve to have a trouble-free maintenance pump. That external flushing in submersible pumps is not required. So this is one of the advantage of submersible pumps. Now, what is the importance of installation depth? I have one schematic, a single column pump with a multiple column construction. Now, what I mean to say a single column is multiple column. This is a single column pump. You can see there is no intermediate bush bearing. So definitely there is no bush sleeve arrangement. So it's like a cantilever design pump. Whereas in this multiple column shaft, you can see there are 2 intermediate bush bearings. So there are 2 bushes in between this. There are 2 sleeves, and for which there is a external flushing line. You can see this flushing line. So you have to always feed a external clear water to this bush and sleeve to flush out the solids. So this is the installation depth for single shaft cantilever pump with a suction tailpiece. And this is a multiple column shaft. So here the problems are more because of the vibrations and all. Here I will explain through next slide what are the advantages.
Kiran, you have 5 more minutes.
Yeah, I'll finish it. Now, what was the importance of installation depth? Now, if you take one by one parameter, flushing in cantilever shaft pump, you don't require any flushing because there is no bush and sleeve arrangement. In multiple shaft, flushing is required. Dry running because in cantilever pump it is possible, but in multi-stage pump you need to give lubrication to the bush bearings, otherwise it will run dry, so it is not recommended. Speeds, yes, it can go up to higher speeds, 2900 rpm, but in multiple shafts you have a limitation up to 1450. Because of this, the vibrations are comparatively high. In case of multi-column shaft, vibrations are low. Definitely the wear and tear will be high, the wear and tear will be less. The handling is difficult in case of multi-column. In single column, you can dismantle this tailpiece, and this 1.52 meter installation depth, it is very easy to handle. The weight is high in case of multiple column shaft. Of course, because of additions of intermediate shafts, couplings, the price is on a higher side compared to cantilever shaft. The space required are more in case of, because the number of joints are more in case of multiple shaft. Operating range, there is limited here because of the cantilever. You can operate from 20% up to 110% of the performance curve. And restart level, here it is low, here it is high. Now, I will explain this case study in a power and plant on a boiler blowdown. What happens exactly if the incorrect data or insufficient data if we get at the inquiry stage. This case study explains the typical problems users may face while using vertical pumps. For this application, it was not possible to use a horizontal end suction pump because of the high temperature and high suction conditions. Vertical pump was the correct solution. The application given during the inquiry stage was water with 25 mm solids, but the actual application was pumping boiler blowdown at 90 degrees temperature. So this you can see the difference, what was given and what was the actual site conditions. Pump installation depth required was 4 meters, and so there was a 3-column construction. External pumping fluid for shaft lubrication was not available because it was having a 25 mm solids. External flushing, we had provided external flushing, but the flushing water was not there. And even if external flushing is given, the water loses its lubricity above 80 degrees. So there was no point in giving an external flushing at 90 degrees. We went to the site, analyzed everything, and finally we gave them a cantilever pump with a suction tailpiece without any bush bearing, and the pump is running for last 8 years. So this is how why the selection is more important. Why a pump manufacturer asks questions at the inquiry stage. So one should understand. So it depends on the operation and the maintenance. Now, what care is to be taken during the installation of vertical pumps? In case of liquid containing solid particles, external flushing at a given pressure and flow should be available at site for trouble-free maintenance. Proper alignment of pump and motor coupling to be done to avoid the deflection of shaft. This is the most important thing. Provision for setting the lowest liquid level and highest liquid level. The pipeline beyond the delivery flange should be either equal or more than the pump discharge diameter. That is the delivery pipe beyond the delivery flange. And while handling the pump, always lift the pump from column pipe. Do not lift the pump from delivery side pipe, as this way delivery pipe may bend and damage the delivery pipe. So with this, I end up my presentation. Thank you.
So Kiran, we do have some questions for you, which I will quickly take up. We have Kamlesh Kumar Punj who is asking this question. Can we use vertical glandless pump for condensate application, which is having temperature in the range of 70 to 80 degrees centigrade?
See, if it's a open sump, then definitely you can go for a glandless pump. But if it's a closed tank, then one should go for at least minimum gland packing.
Okay, let me select the question. So the question is, can we go for replacement of mechanical seal and use gland packing instead if the pump is having height of 4 meters or more than that?
Yes, it is possible.
Okay. Okay. What is Kamlesh Kumar is again asking, what is the maximum length for single shaft with the arrangement of double discharge pipe without using intermediate bush bearing?
Yeah. For single column cantilever, the 1.8 to 2 meters is the height.
Okay. Abhijit Rai Chaudhary is asking, do all VS4 type pumps come with columns as shown, or open shaft version is also available?
No, all come with the column, shaft enclosing tube. That is a column pipe.
Okay. Bharat is asking, for pumping return activated sludge from a secondary clarifier, is submersible pump suitable or centrifugal pump would do?
I think submersible is more suitable.
Okay. Anthony Fernandez is asking, do you supply submersible pumps with a guide pipe where only pump can be lifted for installation and maintenance and not
Yes.
the entire discharge piping?
Yes, we do supply with the guide pipe chain arrangement. For submersible pumps, I'm talking.
Yeah. Okay. Christopher Stephen is asking, how will you differentiate vertical turbine pumps as compared to a VS4?
Pardon me?
He says, how can you differentiate between vertical turbine pumps and vertical submerged pumps, which you have shown VS4?
Yeah, in VS4, as I shown in the sketch, the column pipe and delivery pipe are separate. So one can immediately know which is a vertical turbine pump and which is a VS4 arrangement.
Okay, we have a question from Omar Ahmed. He says that mostly we use submersible pumps. He's from Somalia. He says we use submersible pumps, but due to lack of technical labor, we come across errors and therefore we just replace the pump. Is there any easy technique or ways to maintain the life and sustainability of a submersible pump?
We need to check this. We need to check this point.
Okay.
We'll separately.
Bikash Behra is asking, Kiran sir, for which application or duty condition multi-shaft cantilever pumps are selected?
Multi cantilever.
Yeah, multi-shaft cantilever pumps.
No, multi-shafts are never cantilever design, first of all.
Okay.
So normally for slurry applications, these cantilever pumps are being used when liquid contains any slurry or solid particles.
Okay, we have Mukesh V. He says, do we need priming for cantilever pumps? And if yes, how do we achieve it?
It is a submerged. The pump is submerged in the tank, so it automatically gets primed.
Amit Bhatt is asking, if we give external flushing, then will it be mixed with the tank material?
Yeah, in fact, when we recommend external flushing media, it should be compatible to the pumping liquid, because there is a possibility that external fluid may mix with the pumping fluid. So that compatible external media should be available at site.
Okay, Bikash Behra is asking a question right now to Vineet. He says that, can you explain to us uses of open, semi-open and closed impeller in various applications? Is Vineet there?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, yes.
See, closed impeller are fundamentally used for clear liquid applications. They do not have any solid passing capacity as such, where the shrouds are vents are enclosed between the shrouds, and this is about the closed impeller. Whereas semi-open impeller are having solid handling abilities, and those are semi-open or open for that matter. Those are used for handling liquids containing solid particles on wastewater applications.
We have a question from an anonymous attendees. He says, can you talk about the various vibration levels criteria in your manufacturing pumps, which is Kishore pumps?
You see, this vibration criteria will be governed by ISO 10816 or the relevant standards for vibrations.
Okay, and I'll take a final question now. Vineet he says, would you, again, I think they are asking, would you prefer submersible pumps for sewage pumping?
Yes, we do prefer. We do recommend submersible pump for sewage application.
So another question is from Amit Bhatt. Is it required to do any other thermosyphon system to your arrangement? I think I will ask him to repeat the question. And also, final question, Vineet, is VFD preferable to impeller trimming?
Yes, of course. See, the problem with impeller trimming is, if you trim the impeller today and if tomorrow after say 1 or 2 years the head gets increased, you will have to change the impeller itself. That is not a very convenient proposition. So VFD will always give you more operational flexibility.
Okay. So thanks, Vinit. Thanks, Kiran, for taking time out and doing this technical workshop for us. We have a comment in our chat box saying that this session was very useful and a lot of their concepts got cleared. So thank you very much,
Thanks.
for taking time out and doing this session.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you, Kailash ji.